The further they walked down the long hallway filled with flame and ash, the more she began to dread what they would find after they reached Tiffany. What if he'd already killed her? What if he had left her alive and had tortured her the entire time he'd held her captive? Madison shivered at the last thought. She'd seen the look in his eyes when she dreamed of his other victims. She had no way of knowing what he would or wouldn't do. Alive would be better than dead. Anything would be better than finding a corpse in hell. The thought of a living, breathing, vibrant woman dying in such a wretched place filled Madison with anguish. No one deserved this. They would find her in time, they had to. Mastema would have no way of knowing they'd breached the portals and were well on their way. As they entered a room, Madison recognized the room as the one he'd tried to hold her in when he tried to trap her in the dream. This was it. They'd find Tiffany near. They had to.
What a dump.
Her mother said. Well, I imagine it's difficult to get an interior decorator down here, Madison said to soothe her savaged nerves.
Oh, there are plenty around the inner circles. My ancestral home is beautiful.
It was a joke, Mother. Just a lame attempt at humor to burst the bubble of apprehension I'm feeling.
It wasn't very funny. Demon lesson number 1, all humans have heartbeats.
Madison rolled her eyes. I believe I learned something similar in kindergarten. It's kind of a biological necessity.
Close your eyes and listen. You'll hear your own heartbeat. You'll even hear mine. Then I want you to focus. Find the third heartbeat in this room.
Madison closed her eyes as her mother instructed and could barely hear anything beyond the pounding of her own heart. She tried to block out the sound of hers, and just as her mother predicted, she heard the second, strong, vibrant heartbeat. It beat in an irregular rhythm which sounded unlike anything Madison had ever heard, but she still knew without a doubt it was her mother's. Once more she strained to hear beyond the obvious sounds of the room. It took her a moment, but soon she ignored the thumping from their chests, the inhales and exhales of their lungs, and focused her attention on the world around them. Thump. Thump. There it was. She could hear it. Madison swung around with her eyes widening as she moved and took off in the direction of the sound. Without bothering to think twice as to what else could be beyond the door, Madison burst through the door on the southern end of the soot-filled room. As her eyes adjusted to the darkness, she searched the small room with stale air and fought the feeling of evil which tried to invade her soul. The aura of the room could only be described as bleak and terror-filled. Madison made the motion of a cross from her forehead to her chest, and at both shoulders. That simple motion lifted her spirits, and her eyes adjusted far more rapidly than they had when she first entered. In the corner, in a rumpled heap, lay a body with torn clothing and matted black hair cascading down over its face. Though she heard a heartbeat, it had been faint, and Madison prayed they'd arrived in time to save her. Tiffany? Madison whispered, not wanting to startle the other woman. The woman made no sound, nor even acknowledged Madison arrived in the room. Tiffany? Madison tried again. Again she didn't answer. Mother. Madison called out. She jumped when her mother's hand fell upon her shoulder.
I'll carry her. I'm stronger than you.
The sympathy in her mother's tone brought tears to Madison's eyes. They had to get that poor woman out of the hellhole she laid in. Nothing else mattered at that moment but making sure that Tiffany would not die alone in hell. Her mother walked over and gently slid one arm under Tiffany's head and the other just below her rear end, at her thighs. With little effort, her mother lifted her and cradled her as one would an overgrown child.
Let's go,
her mother said. With a quick nod, she followed her through the door they'd only moments ago arrived in. Despite her joy at finding Tiffany alive, Madison couldn't quell the feeling it had been far too easy. She said as much aloud.
I wouldn't have let you enter the room if there had been danger, Madison. I promised your father you'd be as safe here with me as you would be at home with him. I do not break promises ever. When you are ready, and should you desire, I will teach you the art of reading the trails people leave behind when they exit a room. Mastema left not long before we arrived. The bleak trail he left spoke of anger and frustration. He was not anxious to return. We had time to make our rescue.
You got all that from an invisible trail he left behind? Madison asked.
There is much you can learn from blocking out the distractions of life and seeing beyond the obvious. Now, let's go. Uriel promised me a caramel latte with whipped cream if I arrived back before they finished doing some angel boy errands.
Somehow those words eased Madison's discomfort, and she sent up a few words of her gratitude that they found Tiffany at all. It seemed the more she found out about the supernatural world she'd been born into, the stronger her bond to the man upstairs became. It might have been dreams and heartbeats which guided them, but she knew he had a hand in getting them to that point. "Do you pray?" she asked her mother, suddenly curious where her mother stood on religion.
You do pick odd times for heavy discussions.
She replied.
I know there is a God in heaven and a lunatic in hell. Therefore, I do not live on faith. I also know every living creature has free will, and I chose to turn away from the darkness and look toward the light. He gave me you, and for that alone I will fight for him until I no longer have a breath within me.
Madison nodded, because in a way it made perfect sense. The angels and the creatures of hell didn't have the luxury of choosing what to believe. They were born in a world where the only thing they had to do was open their eyes to see the reality of it all. "Let's go home," Madison said. Together they walked through the corridors and hallways which brought them to their destination. Every so often a halfling would trail them. Madison had the oddest sense that they were protecting them and smiled at each one she saw. They grimaced back in what could only be described as a smile of some sort. As they reached the lobby that led to their portal, Madison took one sweeping look around. For all she'd heard about hell, it didn't strike her as the place where all dreams died, just where they'd been forgotten. Someone needed to come in and clean up the governing body.
After you,
Her mother said. Madison stared at the odd-shaped door with swirling colors of black and purple. It made her wonder who else had gone through the same portal and who would protect the humans against the creatures that followed. After the three women went through it, unwilling to pursue the thought further, Madison stepped through the colorful vortex and fought against the sensation of disorientation until she stood on solid ground in the alley. A second later, her mother arrived.
do you think you can hold her a moment?
Her mother asked.
I need to destroy this portal.
Madison hoped so, even though Tiffany probably weighed more than Madison did. With a quick look around, she wondered where Brian was. It seemed odd that he hadn't waited for her like he said he would. She turned back toward her mother and held out her arms.
I was kidding, Maddie. Cover your eyes.
She closed her eyes as her mother said words in a language she couldn't understand. Within an instant, she saw a flash of light so bright it pierced through her eyelids and burned her retinas. Long after she opened them, light patterns interfered with her vision.
There, now no one can come through there again. Now, where is your wing boy?
"He should be here," Madison said.
I don't like the trails left here. There's one of a dark, rich burgundy. Someone was very suspicious. He stood beside one pissed-off man. I'm betting Brian. There's a slightly bemused one next to him. Let's go find out what happened to our angel friends.
Madison didn't understand the trail thing at all. Once a person left a room, they left. What could they possibly leave behind that her mother would be able to see? Why couldn't she see it? Was it something she could learn? It appears it would be an invaluable skill if she found herself traipsing after victims in the future. They walked out of the alley and found her mother's sleek red sports car. How in the world would they get 3 adult women in a 2-seater car? What were they thinking when they'd brought hers?
There's Brian's truck.
Her mother pointed across the street to where his giant green monster truck stood. They walked over and put Tiffany in the back. They rested her head against the second seat and ran the seatbelt across her body. Madison tucked a few strands of hair behind Tiffany's ear and whispered, "You are safe now. Don't give up. Don't let him win." "Do you have keys?" Madison asked her mother after she got in the passenger seat.
I don't need them.
To further prove her mother ranked high on the list of very cool people, a tiny spark of blue electricity leapt from her fingernail and into the ignition of the truck. It roared to life and her mother winked, and then proceeded to drive home. It only took a few minutes for them to arrive, and Madison knew just by the sight of Uriel on the front step that something had gone wrong. "Where's Brian?" Madison asked as she got out of the truck.
Brian and Raphael have been arrested.
Uriel replied.